What is up, profitable stylist? All 60,000 of you. We are coming up on 1 million views in the history of this channel. And we think every single one of you share these videos. Let's get to 1 million by the end of the month. Bernard, good morning. You look like you have quadruplets.
Bridget
Bridget, you got Bridget. And who else you got?
and Bridget
You got Bridget. Okay, we got two Bridgets. And who else you got?
and Bridget.
And the fourth and final person is
Bridget.
Bridget. Hey,
You couldn't. Yeah, they're
yeah,
quadruplets.
we got quadruplets. We
You
are
can see it in the
talking.
nose.
we- it's the
Sister.
nose and the eyes. You got the same eyelashes. They all have the same
Yeah,
eyelashes. Their mother's eyelashes.
they have no lashes, dude.
People always make the weirdest references. All
Oh,
right.
right.
So we have Bridget's with us today because we are talking about how hair extensions are simple,
Simple.
not easy.
You almost got it backwards, huh?
I almost got it backwards. Say hair extensions are simple, it's not easy. And what that means is you could put hair extensions in. You could teach anybody and show anybody how to put hair extensions in. I mean, as a game, I constantly try to teach my wife how to put hair extensions in. So, and she's not a hairdresser, and I just want to see if I can explain it to her, and if she can wrap her mind around it and do it, then my
Explain to who?
explanation,
Who?
Carmelina.
Oh, your wife.
Yeah, my wife, Carmelina. Yeah. If I can explain it to her, then it's like showing me that I'm explaining it in a simple kind of way that is understandable. But now you start getting into the nuances of extensions, and that's where it doesn't get easy. That's where it starts getting complicated.
Yeah. So
So,
I started to realize that when I started to teach. I think that teaching anything makes you better at it. And you know what I started to find out early on when I was teaching keratin bonded extensions? I was scared to death to teach. First of all, I thought maybe I don't really have enough information to teach. And as I got started reluctantly, I found that the difference was as a keratin. Oh my God, I lost that, Bridget. Let me just pick up another one. As I'm doing hair extensions, I'm looking at it this way, right? But then as I'm teaching it, I'm looking at it this way. So I'm seeing it from the side, and I see the hairdresser here trying to do something there, and I'm noticing that the extension is getting pulled straight out this way. They're holding the hair, putting a keratin bond on there. It was probably you in the first class messing it up. And
oh,
uh,
shots fired. All right, this is
you
how we're
weren't
doing
the
today.
first class. But it even if I see video of me doing it from the side, I'm picking myself apart. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
elevating it. I'm elevating it a little bit. The more you elevate and then seal it, when it starts to fall, those top hairs, it's like a ponytail, you know? You put a pony, and then as it starts to fall, the hairs over the top are the only hairs actually supporting the weight. And the hairs underneath in that section are kind of bubbled, buckled,
Yeah.
I don't know, looped up, whatever you call it. They're not even holding the weight. That was my first experience with technique and tension and what hairs were supporting the weight. And that's kind of what this series, it might be a series. That's what today is all about. Extensions are simple, not easy. Somebody might even be able to get that technique just right. They do everything right, roll the bond, make a flat bond on a keratin bond, or put the tape in just perfectly. You know, here's some tape in patterns. And then the customer gets red bumps, itchy, bald spots, calls and complains. It's hurting. They fall out. And all of those things are the things you and I deal with as educators. We teach people how to do extensions, and we teach a lot. And I know we're talking about the problems. The problems are minimal compared to the amount of people not having problems. But when our life is consumed with dealing with the problems, sometimes we feel
That's
like,
all we're focused on is, oh my gosh, there are so many people doing everything wrong.
right.
There's like
And
1,000 hair extensions done an hour, and we're dealing with the 5-10 people that have an issue.
right. And RJ had to remind me of that sometimes. I'm like, maybe we need, and he's like, calm down. Look at this is all the good, he'll show me how much hair we're selling, how many hair people are buying. And then of course, a lot of times the problem is a girl who bought hair or a guy who bought hair twice this year. Once in January, once in October, and they're having problems. A lot of times it's experience. They don't even do it enough to know how to do it right. And so, yes, we deal with the problems. And the very first thing I do is I ask them, thank God for modern technology, send me a short video of you doing a couple of these, whatever it is, because I can pick apart the technique a lot of times. Because I've always said extensions are like a three-legged stool. You gotta have a good product, a good hairdresser, and a good client. Any one of those three go down. But now we're gonna kind of dive into the details. You can have a good product, and then the hairdresser, what does that mean being good? Using the product and doing a really good technique in this one little square inch of space of real estate on the head is one small part of it. Let's say you get the technique right and you get that angle right and you put it in right, but you put it on top of the head. It's going to show and look terrible, So that's just one small part of the simple, easy situation. You can be good and it can be simple and you get the technique down, but if you don't know where to put it, that's the first step of not doing it right. And placement patterns
matter. We talk about placement all the time.
I'm gonna grab this head that I dropped over here.
Yeah. Placement patterns, we talk about placement all the time because getting a good type of hair or getting a good type of hair extension, that's great. Putting the hair in correctly, yeah, that's great too. But if you put it in correctly, but you put it in the wrong spot, it's not going to look right. It's not going to wear right. And that becomes a bad job, unfortunately. So we harp on that all the time. And I think amongst all the questions we get asked, placement pattern is probably in the top two, right behind. To me, I think placement pattern, how much hair, and how to blend the colors. Those are probably the top three things I get all the time.
And what's funny is our top performing video for like 8 or 9 years now is cutting, because they don't realize that they don't know cutting until it's the one viral video I had was on cutting. Yeah. Because most hairdressers don't realize they're not good or don't know how to cut hair extensions till after the class. Because then they go do their client's hair that's maybe different than the model or the mannequin they did in class. They get into the salon, they got to do a haircut, and here's a good example, and I'm going to use the name because he's not in the business anymore. Brad Swift was one of the first people to do our wefted extensions. Super talented hairdresser, owned his own salon in Midland, Texas. He sold a salon, retired from the hair business, but I remember he called himself out in the class. I said, since these wefts are put in 2 solid rows, if you pull the hair straight up in the air and cut your layers or anywhere up in the air like you normally do, when it falls, it's not going to have the layers in between the wefts to blend it together, so you can't pull it straight up to cut it. He said, oh yeah, that makes sense. 30, 40 minutes later, after he gets the wefts in, he pulls it up in the air and starts cutting it like that. Drops it and it looks stupid. And he said it as he saw it. So it doesn't even matter if you say it. It seems like a lot of people can't get it till they experience it. And right when he does it and drops it, he's looking at it and kind of like thinking out loud. And he says, it was so funny, he says, yeah, you did say not to do that, right? I was like, I'm so glad you said it. I'm glad you remember me saying it. Now you got to feel it, but he was a nice guy. He's still a nice guy. He got a package of hair in one time and he called me up and he says, I need another exact order like the last order I ordered. I don't know what I was thinking, and I just cut the package open and I cut right through all the hair.
Oh no. Oh
yeah. And the hair in the package is folded in half, so he cut the hair almost in half. I mean, he cut half the length off.
That's painful. Oh man, that is so painful.
But we all have these learning experiences, and it's just good. I mean, I've messed up some big jobs, and that's how I've got the experience now. And that's what makes the part where you say it's not easy. It's not easy when you mess up and a full head of extensions needs to be taken out and put back in because you made a mistake. I cut all the bonds too small. on some keratin bonds one time. I kept getting more and more risky, cutting them smaller and smaller and smaller, trying to make
Yeah.
them disappear. And I went so small that they just wasn't enough keratin
I
to
used
support
to
the
do
weight.
that when I first started doing hair extensions, highlights, hair color highlights, and foiling. The whole game was how close to the scalp can you get. So when I had first started learning hair extensions, and I think that this is still applicable to this day now.
Yep.
I every time I'm teaching somebody brand new, ain't done extensions before, they're desperately trying to push that attachment area. Doesn't matter if it's a
Yeah.
bond, a tape, a weft. They're always trying to push that attachment area as close to the scalp as possible. And they don't understand, or it's so hard to get them to understand. You got to leave a little bit of space for it to have some movement. You got to follow that natural fall. You don't have to get straight up into the head.
Well, here's where it all stems from too, is that hair, let's just say it's hanging on the head like this. You've gotta you've gotta lift a little to get a tool and your
To
fingers
get it in
underneath
there.
and
Yeah.
on top to be able to roll or fold or whatever. And so there is a certain bit of lift you have to get to see and do
Wait, how do
something
you do that?
through that little space right there. So it makes a lot of sense that the higher you lift it, the
Yeah.
easier it is to do. Easy usually is not the right thing, right?
Is never the right thing.
I know.
Well, at least with
When
hair extensions, easy is
I
never the
mean,
right thing.
food, fun, working out, all the easy stuff is usually not. I mean, nothing in our life, the easy is usually so right. So the more you lift it, the easier it is to get all kind of tools and fingers and roll. And then when it comes down, it's like pulling the hair out the top of the head and pushing it in the bottom section. And so that's one of the smallest little things. And then if you get the angle right, did you use enough hair to support the weight of the section you were in? That's the one that I learned early on, and I still deal with today. Keratin bond users, and guys, totally from experience, screw up a lot is what I did. Screwed up a lot to figure this out. But I also had some thin-haired clients that were determined to keep hair on their head no matter how bad I was at it. And there wasn't a lot of competition when we first started. So I had to get good at it, or I wanted to, and they wanted me to. So as I kept trying to get better at it, I think her name was Deborah, actually. She was like, Bernard, these lasted a little longer than last time. What did you do different? No clue. So I'm like, I'm looking really
I
hard.
got good. That's what happened.
I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm noticing that I put a little more hair. And then I started realizing over time, we talk about some of these things, but we don't put them together. Like people who are finer and thinner go through the shedding process faster. So if somebody is shedding hair faster, now, you know, it's so many hairs on the head, roughly what, 100,000 hairs. So if somebody sheds 50 hairs a day and regrows them, then you're not really losing hair. You're just replacing hair. But
Recycling. Yeah.
right. But people who are getting thinner, even as thick as my hair is, that is thinner than I was 10 years ago. I used to have a lot more hair per square inch, right? So even if I'm losing, I didn't thin much. I used to have no hair in the tub or shower. And now over the last couple of years, I see a little hair in there. So I know I'm losing a little bit more. So I was probably shedding like I don't know, 10 hairs, 5 hairs a day, and I just didn't even see them. Now I'm shedding more. Let's say 20. Oh man, I bumped the screen again. Let's say I'm shedding 20 hairs. I'm probably not regrowing 20 now. I'm regrowing 18 or 19, you know? And so I'm slowly regrowing less hairs than I did before. And that's what we're doing with age. As we're shedding hairs, more hairs per day. As we get older, we regrow a few less of them. And that's how we end up a little thinner when we get older. Does that make sense?
It makes so complete sense. And that's just
Yeah.
the process, and that's how it goes. You could try to do things to try to prevent that. You could try to do things to improve it and all that. But at the end of the day, that's what's happening. What a lot of people don't realize is you don't get to control or dictate which hairs shed. So if you've got that attached to a hair extension, to that section of the hair, and that section of the hair is part of some of the hairs that shed, that attachment point is going to become weakened. And if you
And
don't
so
have
that
enough hair already in there, that extension's coming out. That area, that attachment area is falling out.
So that's what I learned on Deborah and every other thin hair client from then on. So then it became common practice for me to realize with somebody with fine thin hair, I would have hairdressers say, should I use a half bond instead of a whole bond on her? I'd say, you know what? I have better success with whole bonds. And they're like, on thin hair? And I'd say, well, this is what I do. So let's think about a whole bond. I had a guy count one time. How many hairs are in a typical strand of extensions? Do you know how many hairs are in one?
33.
No, over 100. And so this guy tells me in
He
a
sat there
class,
and counted individual strands of hair.
this is a young, good eyes. And I remember in the class, I said, so when we talk about extensions and how many strands to hook one bond to, I don't know how many are in a strand. And one guy goes, about 117. I said, I thought he was joking. I looked over and he goes, I counted them.
I counted them.
I'm like, what?
Okay.
He said, I counted a few and 117 was the average. Woo, good for you, dude. So I always used to say about 50 hairs. I was totally guessing. I was half off. So if you're going to have about 117 hairs, let's just call it 100. If you have 100 hairs in a bond and you're going to connect it to a person's head, the first thing you should be thinking is I should connect this to 100 hairs.
Yeah.
But 100 of the same size, same strength hairs. Because if a person has thicker, coarser hair, 70 or 80 hairs might hold 100 hairs of a little bit finer, thinner hair. They'll blend together fine.
You're saying, yeah.
Yeah, so it's more about if you could measure the size of the ponytail, the teeny tiny little ponytail. That's what you're trying to match, having the same strength holding it. So if you take a client with finer, thinner hair, it might take 150, 175 hairs to hold 117 hairs of extensions. So if I take one little 100 strand hair and put it on the client, if I take the normal size section I take, which would normally be about 100 hairs from practice and experience, on a fine thin haired client, I go a little wider. So I'm actually pulling a little bit of an angle because I usually take a square the same size as the bond. I go a tiny bit wider and a tiny bit deeper. And that adds 30, 40 hairs to my section, right, and brings it up to more hairs to support the weight. So when I do that on a 100 strand keratin bond to hold, and I'm getting 120, 30, 40 hairs to hold 100 hairs on a fine thin haired client, if I were to cut it in half and do a half bond, well, now I'm at 50 hairs and I do a little bit bigger section. You would think it would be apples to apples, but it's not, because that smaller section, when that 50 hairs sheds down to 15 or 20 hairs, it's a really weak bond, and that's where some damage comes in. But if I got a 100 hair bond in 150 and 40, 50 hairs shed, I've got better support on the full bond. That's just through experience. I was just figuring this out because I would do some half bonds on the side, half bonds up high, bigger bonds down low, trying to make the ones that were more visible. Those were the ones I'd have more trouble with. And so through experience, I started figuring out that the whole bonds held better when I did a little bit better, bigger section on fine thin clients. And I was just trying to figure out, why would that be? And I think it has to do with the shedding. Obviously, there's no way to 100% know. But of course, I had my angle just right. I had a good solid keratin bond. I heated it twice, rolled it or folded it really, really good. Had a good technique, good company I'm dealing with between Great Lengths. And then to move to she hair a few years later. And those little details, lots of little details. Good clean hair, rinsed really well, no products.
I'm so excited. You are so excited right now.
It was so much to learn over the years.
Isn't that discovery the best feeling ever? Is when you start to realize oh wow, I'm starting to get it. It's starting to make sense.
Well, it is exciting because I accidentally ended up in front of some groups where you get a couple of hecklers, and isn't that the biggest fear of an unexperienced speaker in any subject ever? Somebody heckles you on some topic, and then you know the answer, or the topic so well, they're so wrong, it so well that you're like, I'm going to be nice because I know I'm right. and you are so wrong. I could slam you so bad, make you feel and look so stupid. But why? I'm confident with where I am. Maybe I'll try and do a little teaching exercise right here. A lady just yesterday, first time in a long time, got our samples for the onstage extensions, and she texts me something a little rude that this was not for her, and she said something negative about the obviously cheap hair. I was like, have you read the reviews, lady? It's not cheap hair. People love it. It's a great technique. And she said something about the low quality something and cheap hair, and I went a little off on her, as I do. You know, I was really nice. I said, I do appreciate the comment. I want to know what people think, and maybe it's something in our marketing that made it come across as cheap. What do we do different with her? Because it wasn't. You know, it's not cheap hair. I'm paying a lot for the hair and selling it for a lot.
It is not cheap hair, but that's the problem is when somebody doesn't like something, they can't just say it wasn't for me. For some reason, there's this human condition that forces us to say, oh, this thing is crap. You know, it's absolute rubbish. And that's why it's not for me, not because it's just not for me. So it gets tricky. One of the other things that I've run into in my experiences is, and I was guilty of this for a while, I was trying to over direct. I was trying to force the hair extensions to lay in the direction that I wanted them to lay in, not respecting natural fall. So I would be applying them correctly. I would be applying them nice and parallel with the floor and everything, but I'd be putting them on weird angles all the time. And it didn't matter if it was I learned my lesson the worst way from doing it with bonds. Tape-ins was a little more forgiving slightly. Wefts were a little bit more forgiving slightly. But I've come to grips, I've come to terms with understanding that be creative with your placement pattern. Don't try to be creative with the angles when you're trying to put them in. They need to go in with natural fall. They need to go in a very specific way.
And you say natural fall, not natural growth pattern. That's a good point.
No, not natural growth. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't tell. You can kind of tell even with the little pricklies on this head. Most of these mannequins, when they implant the hair, it kind of jets back a little bit on one side. And clients will get to that section and ask, should I go with the way the hair is growing? No, because that's something I made a mistake with too. You would think you would go with the way the hair is growing, but you know what you're doing? You're taking short hair and adding more weight. And where does weight go? It goes from here to here. Weight pulls where the gravity is, you know? And so it's going to pull straight down to your feet. Now, the other thing you got to think of is what is the client doing? Because so often while you're putting the extensions in, they're either like this or like this on the phone. And so natural fall is not natural fall when they look straight forward. So I did learn to look the position of the head, and if they're looking down while I'm doing it, well, I'm trying to follow the ear and the neckline, so that way when they look up, it is actually hanging down, or lift their head up. You know, I started in the days when cell phones were not as popular. Now everybody's staring at their phone all the time, so they're always looking down in their lap, and you got to kind of lift their head up a little bit to find the angle, put a couple in, and then let them get on their phone and just continue to follow that. That's a good point. So when we say hair extensions are simple, not easy, there's so many steps. The first thing I thought was technique. You can get technique right, but you can get placement wrong. You can get the haircut wrong. Haircut's our #1 performing YouTube video ever. I think there's a hair replacement video about to pass it, or may have just recently passed it. But when it came to extensions, cutting was our #1 video. And people don't realize in a class that they even need that. A lot of times they don't even want the cutting training. I know how to cut hair. I just need to know how to put them in. And then they go and cut them wrong, and then they go back looking for videos. So blending extensions, cutting is something that you could definitely up your game on. And then in the technique, you know, we talked about specific technique. We talked a little bit about placement, where to put it on the head, the amount of hairs per square inch to cover it, to cover the weight distribution. It's one of the reasons why we hate on tape in so much. We did that on Facebook. We didn't do it here on YouTube. Let's go ahead and hate tape just a little bit.
Oh, man.
I'm gonna start like just a Facebook
I'm starting
page
to
called
feel
Hate Tape.
bad, right? I'm starting like we. I'm actually
Are
starting to
you?
feel bad. I'm actually having a feeling.
You you feel bad about hating tape, but last week you said all stylists are wrong. You don't feel
No, I
bad for the
didn't say.
stylist?
I said most stylists are wrong. The profitable stylists are smart. There was
Oh,
a
okay.
difference. Go back and
Yeah, we don't need to
re-listen.
rehash that. I just wanted to see if you
Yeah.
remember.
No,
So,
I remember.
on back on the hate tape campaign, hate tape tour,
I take
uh,
tour.
hate tape tour, hate tape tour. Um, RJ tells me yesterday, my business partner, he goes, "Think we're going to start carrying tape," and I'm like, "I'm going to have to do those videos, right? I'm going
Yes,
to have
you
to eat
are.
some words." He said, "Yeah, okay. You don't have to love what you sell." I said, "Well, that's kind of what I've always said, as I like to support what I sell." He goes, "I know, but it doesn't have to be your first choice. You've done tape." I said, "Yeah, I guess you're right. I found better things, so I don't do it anymore." And he said, "But so many people love tape." And I did have to come to some concessions because I said, "You know what? The biggest problem with tape is you got this piece and this piece with all that hair hanging. It's just so much weight to put that tiny strip of hair in between. Even if you do the technique right, the correct angle on a thick, coarse haired person, that's about the only person you can put it on, medium to coarse hair. But if you do all that right, there's still hard to get enough hair in that section to support the weight of two pieces of tape. So what I would want to do is have this backer piece, and most companies don't have this, where you put one tape with a backer piece to hold it in, and not that extra thick wad of hair that you don't need. So like when you put tape in that one section right there, you don't need two right there and two right there and two right there. It's just too much hair right there usually, and you have to thin it out a lot. And if you could just put the one here and the one here and not have double the thickness here and kind of spread it out, I feel like you can do more of a pattern like this where you can get it on more of the head and have more equal distribution. So we'll have that backer piece if we carry tape, and I'll probably start every video with a disclaimer. I don't love tape, but I don't know.
But I have to,
But
I have to start recommending
but
it.
I don't know if I'm gonna recommend it, but everybody wants it. It really is fast and easy. People still do a lot of it. And if we can get a really good quality hair and sell tape and people want it, who am I to stop them?
I mean, we always say there's a technique for, okay, at least I always say there's a product out there for everybody. There's a technique out there for everybody. There is a market out there for everybody as well,
There
too.
is.
So, yeah,
And so far, every
yeah.
technique that we sell or do can be done on just about everybody. And that's what I fear with tape. Too many people put tape in wrong on the wrong people. And that's what I'm scared of. Because you and I, that's what we deal with. The problems mostly, because that's what our job is to sell the new classes and then support them when they need it at the end. We don't get to talk much to the people that have great success. They're super busy, making lots of money, doing a good job, ordering hair, putting them in, hopefully giving us a couple of likes or thumbs up on our Facebook and YouTube posts, but probably not. They're too busy
They're
making
too
money
busy to
doing good
even be
things.
on there, right?
Right. And so what we get is we get the newbies. Thank you for a minute. Goodbye. I'm doing good. Don't need you anymore. And the problem people who do hair extensions once or twice a year, don't do enough to get it right, mess it all up, and then call us and say, there's something wrong with your product.
I think you got a
There's
bad
something wrong with
batch.
your
Yeah.
fingers.
I think there's something wrong with your fingers. But that's what it comes down to. So it's the experience. All these things that we're talking about is just the painful experiences that we've had. But that's what we keep saying all the time. Every single class, I say the best way to get good is to make mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and then move forward. And that's how progress is made. It's
From the
absolutely how
shadow,
progress is made.
from the shadows, do I look like I have a unibrow?
What? That's your glasses.
Yeah, let me
You,
just
you
push
got to
these
put
up
your
there
ring
so you
light
can.
back on.
Yeah,
I think
I got lights on.
I think the other issue what happens is
Let
I
me
don't.
let me correct my last statement real quick. People that call up and have problems, issues, need help, it's actually my favorite thing to do. when they're nice, they're polite, and they actually genuinely need help. I love it. That's probably 90% of my job. I'm always on the phone, talking, texting, messenger messaging, and even video chat. I love helping people get it right. When they call up and they're like, so I took your class and it seemed so easy in the class, but now I got this real person and I have no idea what to do. I'm like, I'm here to help. I love it. I actually love the helping. Where do we start? Did you, is the client there now or already left? Already left. Did you take pictures? Yes. Thank God. Take some pictures because it's hard for me to help you without pictures. If you just start describing somebody to me, they're about this tall and they, their hair's about this long. It's hard. But if you send some pictures, front, side, maybe top, back, that helps a lot. Did you match the color? I think we could probably do it from the picture. We could get pretty close. I can tell you about how much hair you should use. I can even help you with where to put it on the head. Sometimes I screenshot the picture, draw right on the picture, put it here, and I'll draw some lines on the head with the phone. Love phones these days. Send it back to them, and they're like, "Oh, thank you so much. I didn't think about that." Some are like, "What should I use? Wefts or strands? Maybe a little of both." Oh, you can do that. So I enjoy helping and solving the problems because my experience gives me quicker answers than most of them who are just getting started and they're scared. And most of them are willing to order a little more hair than they actually need to be safe. And I say, do that because that's what I used to do. If I think this is where I need to be, but I'm not sure if I need a little more or a little less, get a little more just to be safe. I'd rather have a little too much.
That's what I was going to lead into is people are always afraid of how much hair to order. Some people over order, like you're saying, which is the smart thing to do. But a lot of people do not order enough hair. And then they fall into that trap where they're trying to force what should be, 2 wefts worth only with one, or they're trying to fit 50 strands where it should be 100 strands. They're trying to use 5 sandwiches where it should be 7 or 8 sandwiches. Like it really makes a difference, when you have not having enough hair and trying to spread it out, because that's where on the bottom, on the ends, people don't realize the more you leave space in between, whether it's the rows or whether it's in between each ones, that's where on the bottom it looks more straggly.
And you know why that's really important right now more than ever in the past is for a long time. Well, so first of all, you and I started doing extensions in an era where straight hair was coming into play. We had to do a better placement and cutting job because straight hair shows a lot more mistakes. And then we moved into an era of wavy. Everybody's curling, big curls
and
with
the
those
beachy
little
curls. Yeah.
Well, beachy curls with a straight icicle end. I call it icicles on the ends. And oh my God, I want to do another rant right now, but I'm gonna wait a minute. Bring me back to icicles in a minute.
Okay.
But anyway, curls hide a lot of stuff, and a lot of people started doing curls to hide the mistakes in extensions or hide the things they couldn't place right or cut right. So they just curled it and it all blended together. You could see it a little bit on the ends, but if they curled it and styled it, it didn't show. So now hair is starting to get, styles are starting to get a little more popular, going back a little straighter. Yes, perms are coming back also, but some people are starting to flat iron again and go completely straight.
Well, highlighting is starting to get the highlighting that we used to do all the way from the scalp. Rooted and balayage still exist. But the traditional highlight all the way back up to the top again is starting to come back.
Especially a bolder, chunkier slicing more than weaving right now.
Contrast
and
all that good stuff.
Yeah, big contrast, but straight hair. And so you can't get away with the lesser hair when you're doing straighter hair. You could do one weft or 80, 90 strands and keratin bonds or tips, eye tips. You need to move into the 120, 150 to fill in the gaps in between so that you can do the proper layers or blending, cutting in between so that it'll blend good. What you got going on? You're looking outside.
I thought I heard a siren. I'm like, what is
Yeah, it's over here.
Oh, I'm like, wow. They must have driven right past the salon.
Right. It was all right. I'm at work. I know you're at home. So Your
Yeah, I'm like, there's nothing in this neighborhood. This is the quietest neighborhood in the world. Like,
yeah, no,
I
that's the
live in
main
the dead
road.
end of nowhere.
It was probably we have a fire department a few doors down, so it's probably they're always passing by with sirens on. They pass us before they go anywhere, so we hear a
I
lot of
gotcha. I
sirens.
gotcha. Yeah, no, it just
I saw you look, and I'm like, I bet he hears our siren.
it
So
threw me off
anyway,
for a second.
yeah. Is there any other like simple but not easy things that we haven't covered? I'd like to kind of summarize. I started to summarize it a minute
I
ago.
think not ordering enough hair.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
you know
yeah. So
what? The
not
most
ordering
one
enough air. We kind of glazed over that, but that is one of them. Good
that
point.
was one of them. Having the ability, having the, I don't know what, how do you say it? The courage, or not having the fear to say no. If you can't do it, don't do it. Or if you're doubting that you have the ability to do it, just don't do it. Or if the client's hair, you don't think it's going to work on them, just say no. Like, it's okay to say no.
You know what? We said that over on Facebook earlier,
We
and I
said that
didn't
in
mention that
Facebook.
here
We
on
didn't say
YouTube.
that
So
here
I'm
though.
glad you said that.
That
That
one's a
was what
huge one.
that's what I led with on Facebook. You're right. I forgot. That is huge. I'm dealing with that with my staff right now. Some of them think that, especially when they're newer, they think if a client asks, they must need to know how to do it. So they go along with that older saying, not older, but it's a good saying in a lot of cases, but not in this one. Fake it till you make it. Well, don't
Oh
fake
God,
this
yeah,
one.
not this
Because I
one.
mean, there are some fake it till you make it that is worth doing. But when somebody has black hair like yours and they come in and they go, I want to go all platinum blonde, what do you say? Well, you know what? The new hairdresser says okay and works on it for 2 or 3 days and until it all falls out. And the experienced hairdresser says, well, let's start with a few questions. Is
You're
that
right.
box time?
Let's talk about this.
Let's talk about this for a minute. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't want to. So in my head, I'm thinking, I still want to have this relationship. I still want to make money. I still want to, you're going to do something somewhere. You're probably going to go somewhere else and get something done. So let me at least go through a little learning experience with you or like learn you on something here, girl. You, it's not the best thing to do. Now you might leave here and go to another salon and they'll say, let's give it a try. And they'll get white hair, on 40 or 50% of that hair that's still on your head when they're done. But you're going to get a lot of chemical texture. So sometimes it is best to say the truth. That's not the best thing for your hair. Let's do a little test sample. Let's take a little strand from underneath and put some bleach on there. I'll leave it on there 20, 30 minutes and see what happens. And when it's still black,
Right.
after
Wait, no, now it's brown. It's starting to turn red brown,
orange,
and orange.
and it turned blonde at the scalp, but it didn't halfway down, on that 20-inch hair. And can you imagine if you had that on a real client? You had the blonde roots because you put it right down to the scalp
Okay.
right away because you didn't have the experience
I
and you
learned
didn't
my
know
lesson.
that right. So you learn your lesson, you do it the hard way.
Yeah.
Just recently, I got a few new stylists. So we've had a few. We just had a few days ago a client that a hairdresser started on at 11 in the morning and didn't finish till 7 that night. What the heck are you doing on one client for 8 hours? She's newer. She's learning a lot of learning lessons. The client loved her hair at the end. Great. Then we've had a couple of others where, it's taken 4 and 5 hours. And I'm cringing, but I remember the days when I took hours and hours to screw up and get the wrong thing and get the thing that the client asked for. And then the next time somebody came in looking like her, I was like, no. I'm thinking in my head, no freaking way am I doing this shit again.
Ever again. I ain't never gonna do this ever again.
Yeah. But that's not the words that come out of my mouth. I'm like, what? I think it's a good idea. Let me explain why. And so it's really hard for black hair to, you start explaining how many molecules have been packed in there and you've been coloring your own hair. When you color your own hair, do you just put that color all over your head every single time you do it? Yep, I do it on the first of every month.
Yeah,
And
right.
your hair's down, to your waist, and you're just like, it's not gonna get there. Same thing
Very-
with extensions. Fine, thin-haired client comes in,
yeah.
and she's like, I looked into hair replacement. There's no way I want you to shave my head, so I want to do extensions. No. It's not. Your hair's too thin. You're gonna see the extensions on the side of your head. You're not gonna like it. You're gonna want me to give you your money back. After I bought the hair, put a few hours in, it's not the right option. A topper, a clip-in topper, a beaded topper, and maybe some extensions is the best option for you. And then when they think they know better, it might be okay to say, I don't think I'm the hairdresser for you. I don't think that looks going to be good. You're not going to like it. Maybe somebody else could do that and make you happy, but I just don't think it's right. Or even pass them on to another hairdresser in the same salon, you know? If you're not up to doing the kind of highlight color. There was a girl in my salon who was newer a few years ago. And I got a lot of stories in my own salon.
Since you're on this rant, since you're on a tear, you wanted me to remind you of the icicle? Do you want to do that one too? Because then you said you were going to wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up with this.
Okay.
I want to do a whole video on the trends that started from hairdressers' mistakes.
The trends that started from... Oh, that would be fun.
And my favorite is the 3-layered haircut.
Hey, we reviewed that a while ago. We had a picture of that. We reviewed that a while ago.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can go dig that one.
I don't know if there's enough to do a whole video on because I've only got 2.
Oh dear, yes, there is.
Oh, if you could give me a list and I can see some of those, because right now all I can think
People
of
Walmart, unite.
Well, yeah, true. You know, one of them, we shouldn't give them all away right now, but I will do the icicle one.
Okay.
Do you know where it comes from? Do you know where it comes from? Where they got curls and then it's straight at the end?
I don't know what it's called. I call it beachy waves. I don't know what else to call it.
It's from the curling wands that weren't really a curling iron. It's just a wand, and they're having to wrap the hair around.
That rod. It was just like a rod without the Marcel on.
Yeah, and a lot of people are still using it, but the ends of the hair, you can't hold it against the rod without burning your fingers. So it's wrapped and it's held at the bottom, and then they pull it out, and the end is straight. It became popular. Now girls curl the middle of their hair and leave more of it straight at the end. And to me, it was like, I'm starting to like it because it's been done so much. But that was an accident. That was just I don't want to burn my fingers. And so then girls look at other girls and they're like, oh, cool. How you got that messed up? Hey, they don't say that. That's kind of cool. How do you get that straight at the ends? I can't touch the iron. And and so I know that just comes out of, I watched my girls do it, wrapping it around the wand, and then they just can't. I'm like, why can't you get the ends curled? They're like, well, I'll burn my fingers. But
I like that. That's cool.
That's got to be where it came from. Yeah, maybe it's just my opinion, but I watch it happen to so many people. And I think that a lot of things were done like that, like the 3-layered haircut. That's the bangs, the temple, and right here. When you pull hair straight up the layer and it falls down, boom, 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 down here. And it looks like you got 3 different points on there. It's all layered. You just accentuated the 3 points on the head. And when you layer it back, you see that more than anything else. And oh, does it drive me crazy when somebody asks for something that was never supposed to be. We'll just think about it, try to make a list, see if there's enough of them to go through it, because those are just a few of my favorite things.
Well, what do you all think watching this? If you guys, we'll discuss it next week. And if you guys think you have discovered a mistake, leave us a comment, let us know. And if it's correct, we'll fact check it. We'll cover it in the video.
Right.
Thank you
all
all
right.
for watching.
Don't use Gorilla Glue, guys.